Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? Doing well? Well, if you can't already tell, our cast and our creators are already laughing back there, so we are definitely at a comedy panel. But I'm thrilled to welcome you to the panel for The Paper. This is such a fun show, as we're going to talk about. I am particularly harsh on this show because I worked in a small town newspaper for 8 years. And so I know what this could be and what this is, and it's incredibly accurate to what I experienced. So I'm thrilled to welcome the people that we have here today. We're going to start with Greg Daniels, who is our co-creator, co-showrunner, writer, director, and EP. I'm going to have you sit beside me right there. And then we also have Michael Koman, who is also our co-showrunner, co-creator, writer, and EP. Next, as the TTT Online managing editor and impromptu in memoriam singer, we have Sabrina Impacciatore as Esmeralda. As a proud Michael's Rewards member, we have as Dietrich Melvin Gregg. As newly minted Ohio Journalism Award winner as mayor, we have Chelsea Fry. And as Mr. Digit himself, and definitely not an asshat, as was talked about in the show, we have Oscar Nuñez. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Well, I'm thrilled to talk about The Paper. I think we're all on. Hopefully we are. I want to start, though, obviously, you probably have a few people in this audience who are fans of The Office. Obviously, this is set in the world of The Office, but how did you figure out where to place it? Because it is its own world, in a way. It's its own industry. So where does this show come from between the two of you, Michael and Greg?
Well, it was very important for us to have its own world. Not to, The Office was on 9 years, and didn't want to necessarily repeat, particular storylines. So we really thought, from the perspective of the documentary crew, and what would make an interesting topic for them to pursue, and then of course the fun of the show is all the personal things that happen and the unexpected things that happen. But to make it feel like a real documentary, they would need to be interested in the subject. And this is a big subject of decline of local journalism. So we thought, okay, that's cool. That'll be the kind of straight line.
Yeah. Well, I did not work on The Office. My wife did, and I was, but I watched the show, obviously, like everyone else. And there's a part of you that understands that wherever you set the show is going to have meaning for that city in real life, because, Scranton had a real experience and continues to because of where The Office was set. So in a way, that was like, that, but then it felt like, oh, you can't think about that. And so really, it kind of becomes a thematic question. If you're writing about an industry that's having a difficult time, it's nice to set it in a city that had a similar trajectory. They had an incredible period of time where they were industrializing glass making, and they've had the same difficulties the print journalism has. So that was really the decision.
I will say that having watched it when it came out and rewatched it again before this panel, I feel like I see the word Toledo everywhere now. And so it does have an impact of where you said it. But you have been in writers' rooms. You know the dynamic of creative talents having to sit in these spaces and really turn out good work. And so I feel like you both probably understand the impact of a newsroom in that way, the environment, importance of an ensemble.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Also, Hollywood is going through changes, and as a lot of times we'll be sitting in the writer's room and we'll, make little comments about well, it's a good thing we're in the second half of the career because, here comes AI and stuff, and we'll look over and there'll be all these 20 guys in their 20s and women in our, and they're like looking really shocked. We're like, oh, geez, sorry,
Scandalizing the next generation.
Yeah, you want to be super optimistic about growth in the future for TV writers, but you certainly can feel what journalists are feeling at times.
Absolutely. Were there challenges for you too? I mean, obviously, this genre of mockumentary has changed over time. Just in the past years since The Office was on, were there challenges? Were there things that you were excited about doing with the genre, with the paper?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, our excitement was to be super pure about the documentary and to really believe that at every moment a cameraman had to be standing there and had to not know what was going to happen and did not have access to a script, and it was okay for whoever invited them into the room to let them shoot, because one of the things that we talked about before doing the show was that mockumentary has kind of shifted into a little bit of a style, and when you see people in their bedrooms or something being shot mockumentary style, you're kind of like, well, wait a minute, why did they let the cameraman into the bedroom? That was weird. And
overly familiar at this point.
Yeah, so we wanted to be really strict about it.
Yeah, keep it in the spaces where you would allow that.
Which it's like you do want to, and you almost always end up, it becomes, you want the inconvenience, of you cannot film from this angle because there would be a camera when you cut to the other angle, things like that. And that, I think, is the biggest thing you end up cheating on. I mean, you just find yourself in these situations where you have to choose to tell a story. And to me, the real test of it is when you can just say, like, okay, we're going to make it as hard for ourselves, and we're going to be angry with ourselves when the edit. Yeah. But I don't know why you want to do that, honestly. I don't know why that's appealing to anyone.
We love that kind of torture for ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you start off, it seems like a great idea.
Yeah.
I think the idea is that subliminally, at least, you are believing in the characters more because it doesn't, there's no cheats happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sabrina, Esmeralda comes in hot in this show and remains so the whole time. What excited you about her?
Here.
There we go.
Let's switch.
I think, yeah.
Thank you. She always needs a man to help her.
Sabrina turned it off to set that up.
There you go. I like that.
Was that documented that I was
Very in character.
referred to officially as a man?
Allora, first of all, I would like to add something to what they just said.
Yeah.
Because of what they just said, this makes this show so elegant and sophisticated, which is it's such a joy for an actor to be proud of a project, because this doesn't feel as a product. It feels as a work of art, because these two men are real artists, which is different, I think, from people that are very good at their job. And it's still a huge honor for me to be part of such an elegant project. And at the same time, it's a high challenge because you have to be always believable because of the documentary style, and then you have to be funny. And you have to find that level of credibility. It's edgy, but you have to be like Esmeralda is a bit crazy and wild, which I really find refreshing. And Esmeralda is a character that came to life day by day. Like, first time I was very, very inspired during the audition because the sides were so brilliant. And I think that's the best audition I've ever done in my life, and I'm an actress since a long time. And from that audition, I already got an inspiration. So what I was scared about is the fact that Esmeralda is a negative character because she's terrible. She's she's evil. She's manipulative. And so my concern was, I don't want to be hated by American audience in my second and maybe last project in my life. And so I thought, how can I make her lovable? And I had this image of, oh my gosh, I always forget the name of that. Ecco, bravo, thank you. Because I already said this 100 times and he was there and so he remembers. I had the image of Tweety Bird. You know, this guy. So I thought, that's who she is. She's innocent inside. She's like this little bird that has to survive. And in order to fight for her life and to be there and to not lose that little power that she got, she has to protect herself, and she doesn't even think that she's so nasty. I mean, for her, it's just being alive. And then also what I like about that is that you can find also the possibility to be vulnerable in that. And in fact, when she falls in love, for example, she doesn't see that she's manipulated. So this kind of innocence, to me, is very important to protect as Esmeralda.
It says a lot about the influence that the performer has on the show and on the character, because the character was written 100% as Sylvester, the cat. And yeah, it was just, it was pure Sylvester. There's no question in our mind that that's what we were doing. But the way you did it, like once we started doing it, then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. It's just like a aggressive Tweety Bird.
Aggressive Tweety Bird is amazing. I wish that had been the way I introduced you. Well, I want to come back to Esmeralda on some of the things she does, because she does, you know, she blazes a trail through the newsroom. But for you, Melvin, Dietrich may be the sweetest man in both the paper and the office universe.
And also very sexy, I have to say, no?
Dresses well. What did you like about him, and what did you want to bring to him, and what is he how's he changed for you over the course of this first season? Because he's come out of his shell a little bit, but there's still some of that insecurity, there's still some of that ambition that he wants to find in this industry.
Say the last part of the question again.
How has he changed for you over the first season?
Okay, for sure. So coming into it, what attracted me to the character was he was very sweet. And in my past, I haven't really played sweet characters. So I wanted to explore that world. And also, I love like the innocence of him. I love how awkward he is, how like unsure he is. And I feel like in life, a lot of times we create masks to cover those like insecurities or uncertainties up. And with Dietrich, he just kind of lives in it. And it allows me to kind of live in it and just find comfort in being uncomfortable or awkward. So that was very it's kind of therapeutic in a way. Yeah. And over the course of last season, coming into the second season, Dietrich he's finding his way. He's finding his confidence. He's finding things that he's into. He's getting better at things. So it's just like watching him come to life has been very I don't know, just interesting to play. And as an actor, you just kind of surrender yourself to it. And I find myself kind of backtracking through life because that's something I went through like when I was younger, a lot younger. And it's like, oh, I'm here again. I know what it feels like. It's nostalgic in a weird way, but let me just lean into it and see what, comes out of it.
It's a great way to approach him. I think that he's trying to lean into things. He's such an interesting factor in this newsroom, and this newsroom has to have a certain alchemy to it. You have people who want to do their job, who are not always the people writing, obviously finance department, things like that. But then you have someone like Mayor who wants to be a good journalist and is finding that out in real time with herself. What surprised you about Mayor as we move through this first season and into the second season?
What surprised me? I think she's cynical at first. I think she's just kind of been beaten down by the industry itself and realizing like, okay, this is probably as far as my career is gonna go. And when Ned comes into the office and with all his optimism and warmth and excitement, I think it can't help but rub off on her and brings out this other side of her that was really fun to find.
And I think that last episode of the first season, when all of you are at the awards, I thought it was really beautiful how excited you all were, not just to be dressed up and all of this, looking wonderful in that red, but you were excited for your work, your job, the place where you work, for your coworkers, and that's not it. That could feel very disingenuous, but it felt very genuine in this context and building out these characters over this first season. Oscar, you've got well, technically you've filmed the second season, but we're going to pretend like we don't have that information right now. What was it like to step back into Oscar, and who is Oscar to the paper? Because I feel like, he's grown, he's still reckoning with his time in the office and with that documentary crew. What'd you like about stepping back in as Oscar?
He's older.
I'm not a tech guy. I'm an actor, you guys. I had it upside down again. What was
You want water?
What's happening?
What's it like to be Oscar again? Who is Oscar to the paper?
It's the same character from the Office. Mr. Daniels wanted me to look kind of the same. I had to have some work done, just some light, very light. I'm still, NBC still reimbursing me. That's legal stuff. I don't want to get into it. But I had some light work done, so I would look kind of the same, I guess. He's still gay, but in my mind, he experimented in between the times. But it doesn't matter because it came back around to he's still gay. So that's the same thing. But seriously, he just wants to do his job. He just got hired at another place. He's still an accountant. He's there. Will he make friends? Who knows? He really just wants to work and see what happens. And then very early on, they paired me with, I want to say Chelsea. With Chelsea. And we did an episode, and we were like buddies, and we had an episode with the great Michael Hitchcock. And that's really fun. So Oscar always gets paired up. And kind of the same old thing, which is kind of, he's a bit standoffish, whatever, but he has a soft side, so he kind of befriends Sabrina, which is kind of cool. I like that he's, whatever, heart of gold kind of thing. So, things like that. And then we have a whole new cast, and these guys are amazing. Donal, everyone. And the only depressing part was in the office, there were a lot of us that were kind of like the same age. And now in this show, I kind of feel that I might be one of the older, if not but I feel I'm getting up there.
Okay.
Well, you said contractually that we had to hire 5 actors older than you, so you would be in the middle.
Yeah.
That's like a large part of the budget, and we're not able to use them in the show.
I just work better that way, because you have to feel good in order to project, right? What you're feeling. So I'm told.
No, it's nice. You see them at catering, and hey, Will.
That's right.
Willie, how
That's
you doing?
right.
Nice to see you out there.
So that's right. And there's negotiations. I think I'm scheduled to take acting lessons, whatever that is. Mr. Daniels is setting that up for me, so it's all good.
Well, it's interesting that you're doing that after season 2 for the acting lessons. This has to work. You all have to like each other. As I told our crowd when I came back out on the stage, I worked for a small town newspaper for 8 years in Wilmington, North Carolina. And yes, it was wonderful. I am the journalist I am today because of the people that I met in that newsroom, because of what they taught me. And I am sad for newsrooms today because they get smaller, they change, they have different priorities. We see those conversations in the paper. But those newsrooms have to work.
Yeah, and you know, without giving too much of a dire thing, there will always be journalism. There will always be people being reporters.
Yeah.
It's a very fun and inspiring job, and it's cool to us to write about people who care about their jobs and have that, you know, intellectual excitement about their jobs. And even though the economics of it is changing, you know, that's still a exciting place.
Well, and I wanted to compliment you all, not just because you're sitting in front of me, but because it feels very genuine. Newsroom has to feel like a family. You have to feel like you can walk over to someone's desk and ask them a question without being scared of it being a dumb question or a different answer than you wanted. And I feel like by the end of the first season, you feel that with these people. And I'm just curious, I know it's a question that you are asked all the time, but how did you all get to that point with each other? Is it going out and doing karaoke? Is it, you know, texting each other at all hours of the night? How did you build your newsroom vibe?
Well, for me, Oscar, I think it was the first day of filming. We didn't do any scenes. Greg was just like, go work in the office. And I think we're all like, fuck, like none of us have had real jobs. And Oscar immediately came over to my desk with like, you know, a random piece of paper and was like, so you're gonna wanna move that and that. And I was like, oh my God. He really seems like he's worked because he's been fake working for a million years. And it taught me so much. And that became a thing where you'd kind of like start to go to each other's desks with paper. I have to do this. And that's kind of how I became close with everybody, was going to each other's desks. And then you start talking, and then you're like walking around the office, and then you're kind of trying to figure out like whose desk you can be at so you're not in the background of a shot. And it's like, oh shoot, I guess I'm not in that next shot, because we're always like in the background of stuff. So it was fun. I think that's how we all got to know each other. It's like a movable set.
Can I make a comment on as someone who's not in the cast and also has never played on a basketball team? But it seems to me when I observe you guys, like Michael and I spent so much time in casting, sifting through people, and I'm so excited about the cast. I think everybody is such a brilliant comedian and so funny, and I feel like it must be what it's like to show up on a great basketball team and know that you can pass to somebody and they'll sink a three. Or whatever.
Yeah.
You sound like me talking
That's
about
right,
sports.
Greg. Sink a three, yes,
But,
you're right.
You know what I mean? I gotta think that must help with the fun of coalescing as a cast. Is just to know that you can count on the other people for being really funny and adding to the process.
Allora, first of all, I understand why you chose me, guys, because me, with no heels, I'm such a basket player.
She's got the height. Yep.
I can't believe it. Okay, good. Anyway, allora, I think that they chose the cast not only thinking about great comedians, but very nice human beings, which is kind of rare. And so that already settled an atmosphere of humanity and warmth that makes you feel safe. Because we have to be together all day long, 12 hours, 14 hours sometimes. And we have to be funny. And to be funny, I think in order to be funny, you have to go in the most vulnerable space of your personality. Because to be funny is very intimate thing, I think, for me. It's connected to your nature and also to your fragility and vulnerability. And so already this feeling of being safe helped us a lot to connect. And then we are not competitive with each other. If we are competitive, we are in a good way, like we are inspired by each other. We don't want the other one, like it happened to me in my past jobs as an actress, that some actors try to sabotage your performance. Here it's the opposite. Here we really listen to each other and we really play. And this is, I think, the secret, one of the secrets of this chemistry that we developed, and that really helps the show. And what else? And the other thing is the set designer. She's Italian. I'm very proud of her. Susie Mancini. And she's a young set designer, and she created this space that, guys, you should come to see this set. Really, really, like once you enter in the set, I really believe that I work in an office, and I would have been so bad as Sabrina working in an office, like the worst. And so it feels so believable. You look around, you don't think about your life anymore. There is no life outside. There is only this office, which is a paper, and you are a journalist. And, and that's it. And it's such a fantastic drug, like doing heroin every day, but
Yes,
in a
thank
safe
you.
way.
That's what we wanted from the work environment.
And please don't show up. She means metaphorically, like you're invited, but don't show up.
Well, but I
Somebody
do think
needs to
when
say
you're
that,
saying,
that heroin is not so great, though.
Yes.
Just
I never tried
because we're
heroin, to
being
be honest.
recorded.
well, no, but that's a good way to get people off heroin. If you say it's like
going to work.
It's like a
It's like going to work.
A work
Yeah, yeah.
environment with incredibly long hours. It requires a tremendous.
Great new
amount of-
Dare slogan.
Yes.
Yeah.
You won't see your family. But when you, I think the comparison with the Newsroom, to me the biggest thing is that it is similar. I mean, I'm not in the cast and I don't work in a newspaper, but from my observations, when you show up as a journalist, there is still that sense of how am I going to fit into this in a newsroom, and a little bit of competition. And then I think as you go through it, from what I've understood, there is collaboration that happens with journalists that is very similar to what happens with actors between scenes when they're doing scenes together, where you go into it, and if it's successful, I think it is very bonding. And so over the course of a season and over the course of time at a newspaper, I think you probably end up at a similar place.
You do, and not to keep bringing it back to my own personal experience, but one thing I responded to something with Dietrich is I used to be incredibly shy. When I started at a newspaper, I would have never sat on the stage and talked to you guys in front of an audience. But working with people, talking to them, it brought me out of my shell. And I think we see that in different ways with all four of your characters that are coming out and they're interacting with people, whether it's like Oscar, who just wants to do his job, but now is making games and is excited about what he's done, who is writing reviews, even if someone upstairs is writing bad reviews about those reviews, and wanting to be a journalist and wanting to interact with more people. I think that a newsroom can do that, and as an acting exercise, it seems like that it probably does work for you all. Do you get, I don't want to devalue the work of our writers at all, but do you get to improvise? Do you feel comfortable doing that in this sense, to kind of play it a different way, add things in? What is improvisation? How is it part of this process?
I think it's encouraged. It was a big part of like the audition.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like when you improv, you make up things on the spot. But the writers are so good, and the way they craft the script is so meticulous. They put so much thought into it. To think that you could think of something better than what they thought of is kind of far-fetched. So a lot of times we get what's on the paper. We get a take where we do what's on the script, and then sometimes we'll throw out a variation of what's already on the script and see if that lands, see if it's funny. It's definitely encouraged and is welcomed if we could come up with funny stuff, and we always throw things up. But a lot of the times, like what's on the page is probably the best option.
But the best improv, I don't think, is always a funny line. I think a lot of the times what the actors are adding is something that's true for the character in that moment, and it makes the scene much funnier that they're behaving in a way that seems truthful. And that, to me, like, everyone is incredibly good at it. Oscar less so, but Chelsea is like... to me, I mean, there's so many things that you could pick out of Chelsea's performance that are just a genuine moment that happened that you would not have thought of from reading the script.
Well, that's the beauty of having a show that goes multiple seasons. You as actors get to understand these characters as much as the writers who are writing for them. I do want to read a bit of writing, though, and Sabrina, it's for you. Esmeralda, trying to go after a teenage journalist, thought of ways in which to get revenge. She says, we can give him Lyme disease. I think I have the right ticks. We convince him his father is not really his father. Men hate that. We cut his brakes, and what happens next is in the hands of God. Should we be scared of her? I feel like we should, because those came to her way too quickly. How do you play with the villainy and the brilliance and just the thrill of Esmeralda?
Allora, in real life, I'm such a good person. I never even thought about these horrible things that she thinks. So it's really, to me, it's exciting to think that I could do this to someone. It feels really, really exciting. And it's an exorcism. And actually now that Esmeralda is an alive creature, like a crazy twin, sometimes also in real life, I have Esmeralda's thought. And so this is quite scary. But one thing I would like to say about improvisation, these scripts are really incredibly brilliant. And also they have this method that when we do the table reads, and so we approach to the text for the first time, then after that, they are open to discuss about because when you start to play a character, it's something very weird happens. You start to become this person that is a person that is somewhere else, like in another dimension. This is the feeling I have. A character is here or here, and then somehow, day by day, you go up there, which is another dimension that has nothing to do with right, but you become that person, and so you understand that that person could never say that thing, or could say this thing, but in this other way, or so the script also changes according to what the character, they trust the actors, because I think they chose the actors in this way that these actors could become, do I look crazy when I do this? I think maybe, just a bit. But
What
also,
is that? What are you doing when you...
Changing the white bulb.
The characters appear. The characters here.
Like, this is Esmeralda's flying. Because she's also a little bird sometimes.
Fascinating.
Anyway, the script, for example, about improvisation, these guys are able to inspire, for me, the most exciting body comedy that I've ever explored in my life. I like to use my body a lot, and my little sexy body, and
Why'd you look at Melvin?
I don't know. It's subconscious.
Oh, you know.
It's subconscious.
Well, in a way
I actually don't know. I mean, what's happening here? I don't know. It's
I hope that answers your question.
I mean, I will say...
Anyway, I got lost.
Greg should say,
I'll shut
I
up.
think it's helpful. I think in a way that's very helpful, the table reads. We're frightened of the cast. I'm frightened of Sabrina. And when we do a table read, very often afterward, you'll come up, and she will demand something more extreme than what we were.
You wanna go
doing
farther.
with her. And I've never seen it. She has like no vanity at all. Like, she just wants the character to be funny, and she just wants to have fun. And a lot of times you'd think like, well, no, given the realities of the situation, I think that there's, but no, I'm just like so scared of being called into her trailer. And
So we met with all the cast in the pre-production when we start writing for the next season. You know, we brought all the cast came in and they talked about the character and what they were hoping for the future. Sabrina basically said she likes to beat up children. That was what she said. Esmeralda is funny, pushing kids around, and I think because maybe she's the same size as the kids, it's okay.
That's true.
But
I hope I'm not ruining something in the future because we haven't done it, but she wanted so badly for us to go to her house at some point and see her son Mateo sewing dresses. Which I love that image so much, and I hope we.
Well, she had him auditioning in the first season, so.
But that's not it's not a request that you get from many performers.
I love that. Well, before we transition to audience questions, I have a quick lightning round question for you. You work at a real newspaper. What's your beat? What are you covering? All of you, Greg and Michael included.
Well, I actually worked at my college newspaper, and I wrote television reviews.
Same.
Really?
Yes.
And I remember one of my reviews was of the A-Team when it came out. I was a big fan. And another one was I reviewed the Harlem Globetrotters Go to Gilligan's Island, which was a TV movie at the time, which I also found very enjoyable. So probably TV reviewing beat.
TV reviewing. Okay. What about you?
I mean, it's not exciting. I really do think I would be the guy who goes to city council meetings and sits there for 8 hours and tries to take some notes and writes up something that would have gotten ignored.
Where the news is happening.
It is, and those people, I think, it's an extremely cool job.
Yeah.
For me.
Any of you? Anybody have one off the top of their mind?
Sexual lives and thoughts of evangelists.
Okay. Hell of a column. Hell of a column.
I mean, I have the palate of a trash can, but the idea of getting free meals and reviewing restaurants sounds really nice.
Oscar was doing that this season. There you go. Why not?
Would be good, but
Why not? If you can somehow, get into that and have them pay for you to just eat, I think we would all take that. What about you two?
My answer is interesting. Like, I would probably do like the classified ads.
That's not interesting. I find that to be so interesting.
Allora, I think I would become like someone specialized in movies and television, and I would write incredible, come si dice, critics about Sabrina Impacciatore's work. That's what I would do.
I love it. I love it. I love
But
it.
I would like to do the love letters session. I would be so good with that.
A lost art in newspapers. I love it. All right, so we have a few minutes for audience questions. Who has a question? We have one back here. Now, we do have mic runners, so right there, if you will hand it to her right here. There we go.
Hi. The relationship that's building between Ned and Mare, and obviously this season finale was like pretty epic. It took them out of the office, and there was the kiss. There's always that tension in a will they, won't they couple, like when something will happen. And it really reminded me of the end of season 2 of The Office, the Jim and Pam kiss. Were you conscious of that parallel at all when you were kind of crafting that moment?
Well, I do think that when you're writing a romantic relationship, there's a lot of questions about how fast to progress it, how slow to progress it. It becomes a conversation with the actors and with the fans kind of too when you see what they're into. And so, without giving anything away about season 2, I mean, it was completely on our mind. And I remember with Jim and Pam, we were thinking about Sam and Diane. We were thinking about other TV shows and whether they gotten it right, whether they, I have don't want to go into talking about Scrubs, but like there's other shows that do it different ways. And so it's a constant thought about what is the most fun for the audience. Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about how you and Donald approach these two?
Yeah, I mean, Donald's amazing. He's truly one of like my best friends now for life. I adore him. And we've had so much fun exploring their characters. I think the coolest thing, particularly in season 1, is there's just such this love of journalism. Like whatever is happening between them is its own thing, but they're constantly after this same goal that will kind of always keep them together in this way. And then it's also fun to explore how that, coincides with whatever feelings there may be.
But, we have tons of discussions about the psychology of the two people. And the psychology of these two are completely different from the psychology of Jim and Pam. They're different people, and part of the challenge is to find a unique pair that are both have comedic aspects to them, but also you try and decide what do they find attractive about each other, and you have to kind of always try and keep that present so that it feels plausible that they are drawn to each other.
Yeah, totally. And it's one of my favorite parts of this job is I think weekly we would get together, Donal and I, with Greg and Michael and the writer and director of the week, and talk about where we are at specifically in their story. And it's just so collaborative and so fun, and you get into these like little arguments of like what you think is okay. Like my parents met at work, so I'm always like, it's fine, and other people are like, well, but you need to be careful. So it's just very fun to talk about.
Do we have another one right over here?
I had occasion years ago to spend a little bit of time with Mick Jagger's younger brother, and it was very interesting to talk to him about what it was like, because he's also a musician, to grow up in the shadow of Mick Jagger when he himself is cutting albums and doing things like that. What kind of pressures are on you guys now with this show being sort of the younger brother of The Office?
That is a great question.
Don't remind us.
I mean, also, I felt it much more when the first season was first coming out, and I was really surprised that people who I think of as having been very familiar with television and how it works would see it and not exactly know whether this was a completely new story or whether it was meant to be some sort of one-to-one, remaking. And in my mind, obviously, it's like, other than the crew coming in, this is a new story. This is meant to be the subject of a documentary that would, if anything, have enough new ground that the same documentary crew would want to cover it. That in my mind. So it's inevitable. But I was surprised that when my friend told me, he was like, I kept looking like, who's Dwight? Who's this? And then the second time he watched it, he said it was another show. I couldn't believe how much I had kind of missed watching it that way. So my hope is that by the time the second season is coming around, people are kind of looking at it as its own story and its own show, and they are not. It's kind of breaking free of that association as it moves forward.
I've dealt with this a few times because in adapting The Office from the British show, everybody had that feeling, and then in doing Parks and Rec, everybody was like, "Oh, you're doing another documentary," and I kind of feel like talking to the audience who likes The Office. It's like, this is the spirit of the show. This is like where you would find more similar types of humor if you like that, but not a retread or anything. Hopefully that's just some kind of disrespectful copy or something like that. This is basically the best place to find new episodes that'll tickle that same itch, I guess.
Me as an actress, when I was chosen, I didn't sleep for many nights, and I thought they're going to fire me very easily, very fastly, and I was so scared to be compared to Steve Carell that I decided to do a ritual.
Well, people would compare you more to Meredith, probably. The great Kate Flannery. Don't want to go to her for a joke, but
anyway, I was so really terrified that I got to know that he was performing in New York, playing Uncle Vanya. So I was in Rome, and I thought, how many days do I have? He was there for a few days more, and I decided to fly to New York. I bought the ticket to see the show. I watched the show, and then I went to the green room to meet him and to have his blessing. And that happened. And that in that moment made me feel just a little bit better. And he was so encouraging. He was so sweet. He hugged me tight and he said, don't worry, it's going to be so easy to work with. He had worked with Greg for many years. So he said, you will see how incredible it is to work with Greg. And he will put it you in the best conditions to give your best. And so that little ritual somehow, because I believe in magic and weird things, I thought, okay, so this is already a little bit of protection. And then when I arrived on set, I decided to forget about the office, never think about it, and just living the moment of being here and now and trying to give everything I can give and more. And this is how I keep going. I can't think about anything else. But if you live the moment, and if you are so honest and you give everything, that everything will arrive somewhere. Hopefully.
I think the sibling analogy is great because they share the same DNA, but it's different. The Mick Jagger, I never heard of his little brother, so hopefully we don't follow in his footsteps. No shade to Evan Jagger, but I would like to liken it to, let's just say a Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson.
There you go.
We're very Janet.
Yeah. We have Joe Jackson in common here. He fathered both of us, and we can too go on to do great things, but do it our way.
I like it. All right, I think we have time for one more right here.
Okay, so as television kind of shifts away from the traditional 20-episode seasons and moves more towards shorter, more streamlined seasons, what are the different choices you all had to make as writers and as actors just to kind of help the audience get to know your characters a lot more quickly?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. I'm thinking it may be shifting back a little bit. I mean, there's so much more ad-supported behavior now. That could maybe go to the people a few rows back who are produce the show. We would love to be able to do more episodes. The main thing I think as writers is that we are looking at it as each season is kind of like a new book or something that's being put out in a series. And so the season itself should have a shape and a beginning, middle, and end. And we think that's kind of a satisfying way to experience a season because there's a big, time delay between seasons in this world. But what that does is it means that there's a good bit of arc material that you have to write towards. And oftentimes the joyful part of the show are the episodic stories in the middle where, you're not servicing any long-range arc. It's just a goofy, story of the day. So we talk a lot of times about just how to balance keeping the comedic joy of a story of the day feeling and also a long-term arc.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably the biggest factor, I think, is knowing that there's going to be a substantial amount of time but from after the end of the story, and when it resumes, you do want to end with something meaningful. So you need to get the characters in 10 episodes from one place to another, and it does sort of create a demand for a little bit of an accelerated structure in some ways. Like you want to feel like the distance isn't short just because you have a little shorter time to tell it in. So I would say that it really affects the feeling that television used to have real episodes with very small stories where very little was happening and it was just a purely fun story. I mean, they're always going to be fun, but it's something that doesn't feel related to something. And now I think I think the audience looks for it, and when you tell the story, it feels more natural that something significant is moving forward almost always.
Well, one thing that I think that you all do good in this series, and it might direct to what you do, is you're right. In a 22-episode season, there's a lot of episodes that are cut from the same cloth. But in this first season, you all get paired in very different ways in each episode, which I think brings out different factors in your characters. And you might do that a little bit on a longer scale in a longer season, but, you know, putting Oscar and Mayor together, putting, you know, Esmeralda and Mayor together, or Melvin and everyone, all of that brings out new flavors in these characters even more quickly. And I think that in your first 10 episodes, you do that extremely well. I think the fact that our first question today was about Mayor and Ned and their romantic relationship, you felt it in that first season only with 10 episodes. And I think you feel it with Esmeralda. And so I imagine from an acting standpoint and from a writing standpoint, just getting at the heart of some of these different aspects of these characters, regardless of the time, is really the goal.
Well, it's characters interacting, and then it's also the desire to see performers interact. You know, it's a special thing when Sabrina and Melvin are in a scene together, and it's fun to. And when Chelsea and Oscar are working together, that dynamic is part of it. You know, it's this. They are like incredible performers, and they have different speeds and different things they can do. And I think the combinations bring that out.
And then you put them all in a conference room, and then talk about how many layers Marion Davies had in her skirt. And so you don't have to wait that long for season 2. It's coming out in September. Thank you all for being here today, for talking about the paper. We do appreciate it. And watch season 1 on Peacock right now. Thank you all so much.
Thank you guys for coming out.